Jim, great to be here with you today.
I know, Cal. It's like every time we get together, my brain hurts when I leave, man, because you poke and prod and ask questions. And so, but at the same time, I'm super excited to get going on this.
Yeah, the magic here, I believe, Jim, is we think alike because, I hear all these people talking about products and methods that you've been speaking about for years, but you seem to be the one, to me, I want to talk to the person who doesn't just read research. I want to talk to the person who's done testing, found some results, see if they can change it, and then retest. And that's the magic about what you've done. I see people talking about things that I learned from you years ago. And it's like, wow, Jim has done the blood tests and retesting in this, right? And I think I do the same in training, but ultimately I want to hear from the person that doesn't read all the research and interpret it. I want to see the person who's made changes, right? And that's where I think it gets me excited because of your background and experience of what you've done and created.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's the truth. It's like you can read a paper, but nothing gives you wisdom of how to enhance what I call performance health, whether you're an athlete, entrepreneur, or someone struggling with an illness. Nothing is the substitute for assessment, plan, and then reassessment. That's simple. Right. And I love when I talk to you because you always tell me about the next 300 people you've collected data on. So, one of the things I want to ask you about, I know you're excited about talking about glutathione, but I know you've been playing with synapsin.
Yes.
So give me a couple of the different case studies that you've done to start to kind of liberate your mind as to what you think is going on with synapsin.
So with synapsin, as you know, as you've talked about, the shift from the stress state to the relaxed state and the parasympathetic sympathetic shift. And that's magic in most athletes because if you can be in a calm state, you can make the right decisions, things are going well. And one of the first experiences I had with an elite athlete that was taking it was that their ability to calm their heart rate down, literally instead of the previous workouts, in between exercises and sets, they're about 110 was a good rule of thumb.
Right.
Well, with a simple breathing technique that I can briefly cover, but in the synapsin, having more control over that sympathetic to parasympathetic shift, we saw a decrease in roughly about 20 heartbeats. And what people don't understand is that much decrease is telling us that the body doesn't need the heart to beat more. But it completely is, and it's not just with the heart, it's systemically. So you have to believe that his ability to calm down was in the capillaries, it was in the arteries and the veins to carry all the substrates. Because if he still needed material, his heart would have kept beating fast, right? But in between the systemic application here is, and look, every cell is controlled by the nervous, or at some point, it's controlled by the nervous system.
Absolutely.
So if the synaptic gives us more control over your brain, and now I gave him a simple breathing technique to be able to calm himself down in between sets. It takes a split second.
Right.
And he's able to reduce everything quicker. Now I told him, look, it's not just for training. It's you play in the NFL. It's between plays. Do your breathing, and with the synapsin, you're going. This is calming him down. He can make the right plays. He can make the right reach.
Get off the ball quicker, right? I mean, it's reaction time, man. I mean,
yeah.
And I love what you said about the peripheral vascular circulation because people don't appreciate that. You've got this whole microcapillary network that's driving blood and taking away the byproducts of metabolism. And when your heart rate's up, the blood vessels are more constricted because of the sympathetic tone. And now I'm allowing that blood flow to get back to provide the nutrients needed to get rid of the ischemic processes that are taking place that are creating depositions of lactate. Now all of a sudden I'm recovering better after I'm performing well, right? So my reaction times are better. I'm recovering better.
On the spot.
On the spot.
Right? We're talking in between plays. We're not talking recovery after the game.
Yeah, right on, man.
So then as Kevin and I talked previously in a podcast, if you can recover in between plays, the stress of the game was less affecting you.
That's right.
Your tissue's less beat up. And that accumulates over the course of the season.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You've, instead of playing 20 games, you may end up only playing 16, 17 realistically by the accumulation of less stress that's been involved.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. That's a big deal.
Well, and then Jim, with when we analyze heart rates and you get a big time quarterback, heart of the game, if his heart rate's 160 in the middle of the huddle and he's nervous, things aren't going to work out.
No. He's not going to put the ball where he needs to. It's that simple.
Well, fine motor skills deteriorate when your heart rate gets above about 130, 140. So
right.
This quarterback making these decisions, he's not going to make the right decision maybe. And then the fine motor skills deteriorate. So if you can keep that heart rate in between plays, and they talk about how athletes just walk in with confidence. They had that confidence. They had that ability. Well, they're calm. And
That's
this
right.
is right. And this is
That's
what
exactly
my opinion, and we're going to go back to skill. Everything in sports is skill. So if that heart rate's creeping up over the course of the game and you can't control it because of stress, nerves, whatever you want to call it, ultimately the thought process in repeating the correct skill that you did in the first quarter isn't going to be there. It's not possible, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've always said that, what separates a professional athlete from all the rest of us is their nervous system and their ability to recover, the ability of the nervous system to fire efficiently. So whether they're going down their 8th run down a giant slalom, they're still seeing 5 gates ahead what they're supposed to be doing and navigating in our work with Corvette race team. When we, used Synapsin with them and they went and won Le Mans, I mean, they said, I just was more calm and more in control of the car. And I just had a motorcycle racer that said the same thing. He was doing, simulated testing at 24 times his normal speed using Synapsin, gets on the track for the first time and tracks the 3rd fastest time. And if you know motorcycle racing, there are a lot of banks and curves. It is not easy to go on a track there. First time, 3rd fastest time ever. And I think we don't appreciate that fact unless you've actually played a sport. I always tell people, and you know this, Cal, you walk up to a bar and say you're going to do a deadlift or you're going to do a bench press. You grab that bar, and before you even try to lift it off, you know whether you've got it or not, right?
Right.
Your nervous system's already communicated that.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's important. We just haven't discussed the importance of neuroimmune communication and how that shapes the resiliency throughout the, whether it's a game, whether it's someone in tactical in forces, or whether it's a business executive working a 12-hour day, man, it all is the same.
It's all the same. And the magic, Jim, at least in my elite athletes I see is the coordination. Right. So what's the best athlete in the world? And I've been fortunate sometimes in their sport or position to coach one of the best. And when I see an athlete like that, the ability to move at a highly coordinated levels is really magical. And I've said in other places that it's like violent ballerinas that it's just magical. The power they produce. Now, the relaxation part of this is that their muscles can relax. They relax faster than everybody else. So over time, if a muscle relaxes, it's applying less stress all over the body. So then you're talking about your tendons and everything else. It's functioning at the highest level. It's a perfect match. In a car, it's like everything's working between the transmission and the motor correctly.
Yeah.
And when you're less stressed in that relaxed state. So my point to you is some of the things we saw with not only the heartbeat of people calming down, but let's take one of my oscillatory movements where an athlete can get roughly we were measuring, and I think it was a 7-second day, they got roughly 18 reps of a high-speed movement between 2 bands just oscillating as fast as they could. Well, the first day they take the Synapsin, they come to me and go, hey, I got 23 reps. My best has been 17. And we're talking a little bit of, it's not much time to do that, right? But essentially it seemed like there was an extra seconds or so, but they got 23 reps.
Right.
And it stayed that way through the duration. So you're going, hey, we just took a measurement they're more coordinated.
Right.
And I say this because
it's speed of coordination too, right?
The speed, because the muscle can relax faster, theoretically. Now you can get more repetitions, because if the muscle holds tension, you can't reverse it as fast. So there's no question that one of the major qualities in all elite athletes is that their ability is to relax their muscles more than everybody else. It's been shown, like the couch potato in an elite athlete isn't to contract the muscle speed. That's not the major difference. It's how fast they relax it and let the tension out, right? So if they can let the tension out, and then they have, and that comes along with focus. If the focus is just an indicator that the brain and the nervous system, in my opinion, is working optimally. So then they relax their muscles faster. And then Kevin and I have talked where if they're more coordinated, you can sprint the same distance and activate less muscles. We've seen that. So you use less energy over time. So then, hey, in a third period game, you're playing like it's the first period, or in the third period, or in overtime. You're just playing like it's the first period.
It's like you've got a savings bank for efficiency going on. So by the third period, the tank's not empty. What I always talk, when I talk to hockey players, for example, I'd be like, hey, you're in the third period and you think you're going to get to that puck and you're always used to making that shot, but the stick just doesn't quite either get to the puck, or when you go to make your shot, you could feel that something was off. That's that difference between, what I call in that suspension of, watching the lotus flower bloom, right? In having your chemistry in the moment, or trying to catch up.
Yes.
And when your chemistry is trying to catch up, that's setting up metabolic inflammation, known as metaflammation. One of the principal aspects of metaflammation is that we create more redox stress, right? We lose our oxidation reduction homeostasis. So now my rate of rusting is going up. And when I lose my rate of rusting and my reactive oxygen species are up, I deplete my glutathione pool. And when I deplete my glutathione pool, now I'm not going to make neurotransmitters as well. I'm not going to detoxify as well. I'm not going to run many enzymatic reactions as well, or be able to neutralize those free radicals. And then free radicals end up accelerating damage, otherwise known as inflammaging. So metaflammation leads to inflammaging. And Cal, I know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of athletes you have trained and seen. And isn't it interesting how some athletes can suspend their gift for 20 years, and yet the other ones are bright stars burn fast, right? 5 years in the league, 3 years in the league, their brilliance is gone. And a lot of that's due to that progression of systemic metabolic failure to return to homeostasis, like what you just talked about from the stretch to rest, like to return to rest. It's the same thing for your metabolism. Glutathione's at the middle of it. You could do IV glutathione. Just the half-life's not that great, but you could build your pools up that way. A lot of glutathiones really aren't that absorbed that well. Acetylglutathione is absorbed really well. We took acetylglutathione and then put it in a lipotab technology because we realized that at the core foundation of loss of homeostasis, repair, recovery, and rejuvenation, glutathione sits in the middle of it. So we have that acetylglutathione LPT. I know you're excited about that. I'm kind of wondering, how are you going to use that?
Well, Jim, I think the biggest thing people have to realize is you have to, when you say get back to homeostasis, you just have to get back to that normal state, right? That's what we're talking about. And what you're saying there is over time is all this stress and inflammation from a metabolic aspect, it won't allow you to get there. You're not there in a flame state. Right. The body's constantly thinking there's a vicious cycle. So what happens, the furnaces go up through the entire body and you're burning hot, even when you're sleeping. So you can't recover. And then the stars that burn out are the ones that there's something internally, and it's part of the process, right? That they're going to burn out because everything's inflamed. everything's a problem. And if you really look at the blood tests on somebody like that, you saw it 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
You've seen it how many times?
Thousands. Yeah.
Right. So
A lot.
So to me, Jim, that one's a great one for just literally alone, just keeping the homeostasis right. But also it's such a great molecule for example, Mike and Kevin, we know how many of the pro athletes eat a lot of sushi with, let's say, mercury in there. And I mean, that's one substance that can help protect the nervous system and kind of clean things out of the body, right? It's such a great detoxifier. Am I correct with that?
That is correct. Yeah, exactly.
And athlete has high mercury levels because they're eating a lot of the sushi, let's say tuna, you know what I mean, shark.
Oh, yeah.
Any of those have large amounts of mercury in them.
Right.
Right? Because of the food chain, they eat all the small fish that have it. It adds up. But ultimately, somebody that has high mercury, their nervous system is inflamed and stressed too. So it's a double whammy on these people that burn out, in my opinion. There's a lot of variables in this system.
And people think they're eating healthy when they're eating sushi.
Right?
Which I love sushi. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna make sure I'm detoxifying in the process. But I had a bodybuilder in California who ate 2 pounds of sushi grade, tuna, almost every day. He ends up starting to get heart failure. So his docs call, I'm kind of people call me when there's a weird case, and, I kind of walk in and go, well, here's the chemistry of it, right? His mercury level was through the roof. And he literally, the doctors had said he's got cardiomyopathy. His heart is not functioning the way it's supposed to. And our team cleaned up his mercury, and heart got back to functioning great. Training fantastic, felt like a champ. Now that's a really dramatic example, but I'm just highlighting it because I don't think people appreciate that. You really, without doing some periodic blood labs to kind of find out where you're at, you don't know really where you're at.
No.
You got to take a look at your blood, urine, saliva. There's other tests too that are important. Things like heart rate variability, 2-minute resting, recovery, resting heart rate. I mean, there's so many aspects of what's going to tell us we're healthy. But, labs will tell you if you're metabolically inflamed. I mean, if you're insulin resistant, if you're pushing out a 15 insulin and a 95 blood sugar and your mean platelet volume's elevated and you're making a lot of bad actor lipids and your iron to ferritin ratio is really big, right? Lots of iron, no ferritin. All that's doing is leading you to a path. Bone loss, degenerative processes, so decrease in neurogenesis, and then loss of mitochondrial capacity. So my nerves don't fire, my cells don't have the energy to even respond to that firing. And then I even become more prone for things like hip fracture, stress fracture. And how often, you've had 500 All-Americans. Yeah. How often do you see stress fractures, limiting those folks in that time, during the course of their seasons? Maybe not the All-Americans because they made it to the end, they got the award, but all the other people that you've seen.
Yeah. And well, as you state, the pH levels in those people are often very poor, right? So there's such, and this is just a vicious cycle they can't get out of because they can't stop training, right, Jim? Right. So everything you just mentioned in all these cycles, it does not, there's some vicious cycle. And part of this whole thing is not everybody in the same plan or in the same system will all adapt or negatively adapt. So
that's right.
The HRV, Jim, you can take it, there's a problem, but even if it's just pH levels, the HRV is going to be poor. We know this, right?
We love pH levels.
Right. And but as you educated me on, now the magic is those are just little indicators that you've got a chronic problem. If my HRV and I can't fix it and there's things going on, well, then I know it's a systemic problem, whether it be inflammation. Well, then that's when a blood test has to come into play,
right? For
us to get a really good look under the hood.
That's right. And just to go on this, because you mentioned pH, and I love pH, as you know. I mean, I can lecture it days and days because I just think it's so fundamental to understanding that the more acidic you are, the more hydrogen ions that you have, the more you're damaging your tissues and the less electric potential you have for your body to be that electrical potentiated being that it is.
Everything runs on electricity. We're a bioelectrical system.
Right.
Our muscles, our brain, the communication. And if you're just dimming the light switches.
Right.
So everything you just talked about and the pH, if everything worsens, you're dimming the light switch. Now, some people are so great that a little bit of light switch dim here and there is not going to, they're going to still perform, right?
That's right.
There's a lot in performance, but ultimately, over time, they're going to break.
That's exactly right.
Whether it's tissue, dysfunction, whatever it may be, because if you're in that acidic state, we know your tissue's not going to heal as fast.
That's right.
It's going to take long. So then are you more apt to get tendonitis or even a torn muscle, tendon? Those are the problems.
Yeah, and even blood pressure, right? I mean, a lot of times people don't appreciate that. I know I have athletes that I see that are borderline hypertensive, and they're acidotic. Their pH is acidic, and that makes a lot of sense because when you start to compress the blood flow to the kidneys, you're going to create more oxidative damage, create more free radicals that then create more hydrogen ions, which creates more pH. And now you're getting damage. You can't make your erythropoietin the way you should. And now, hey, I'm just not oxygenating as well because of both the vascular component, like you mentioned earlier, but there was a study where they gave people that needed glucose medication, blood pressure medication, right, and lipid medication. They gave all three of them to people, and their glucose got better, and their lipids got better, right? Everything got better. Their blood pressure got better. But what they couldn't stop was the progression of renovascular disease if pH wasn't corrected.
Yes.
So I love that you have, you've explored it more than I have, brother. I think you look at that pH like so much and see the difference in performance in people. What's the number one thing that you do for pH? Number one thing you do for people?
I have found the HRV, if it's consistent and I can't fix it over day,
right,
the pH is a problem. So then what I will do is I'll do the saliva formula and the urine formula that you gave me.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what do you give them?
Greens can be an effective tool.
Sure.
Right.
It's great to get them to eat greens if you can.
Right. Because not only that does it give them a ton of possibilities in regards to just other things that they benefit.
Absolutely.
And then I throw in a lot of recovery, the 20-minute walks and just moving blood or oxygen into their system seems to help a lot. But also if they're in the off season, you got to cut back on certain types of training, like heavy eccentrics is really going to cause detriment, and then you're not going to heal from them, right? Or a lot of lactate intervals or a lot of interval training itself can be a problem versus I've seen, and my young athletes respond fairly well, right?
Sure.
So just a download, 3 or 4 extra days of download with aerobic based component, your heart's working at 120 beats per minute, so it's really efficient, and you're working on your breathing technique. Seems to do a number of things because their body's so young. Is that going to work in an older male adult? Probably not.
Are you referring to me?
Yeah, no, I'm
Come
old
on,
now.
man.
Jim.
I think you're referring to me on that one.
But my athletes are quick responders in most cases.
Of course.
So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I think take a magnesium, take a potassium. If they're not going to eat greens, if they're not going to drink green drinks, awesome. And once again, every time I talk to you, I always pick up another pearl that I know you're tracking because I know I'm big on testing the microcapillaries and microcapillary compression and just the way you really are passionate about that recovery cycle, including microcapillary refill of blood flow.
Yes.
You're going to get tremendous recovery capacity from that. So Cal,
right? Well,
you're always at the top, man.
If you're acidic, you're not going to get the capillary or the angiogenesis development that you want.
That's right.
And I tell people somewhere around in my program around the 25th workout to 30, that'd be 5 weeks in, there's a increase in the person's work capacity. And the theory is, it actually came out of the Soviet Union from years ago, is that the capillaries are actually starting to grow and cover a lot of the muscular system from both sides at that point, because it takes about that long. And now, but in a acidic state with bad pH, or the entire metabolic system's messed up,
Right.
not functioning correctly, you're not going to see that increase in work capacity that week 5 or 6 if you're in a hard training system that you would normally get. But the theory is that the capillaries are going together, and now they're covering so much of all the cells in your body that you can just increase the load. So this is just telling us how important it is, and especially at the end of the season with athletes and insulin sensitivity, and when you educated me on the endothelium being inflamed, Jim, there's such a huge lack of recovering at the muscular level when that thing's inflamed. And you said it's only literally sometimes one cell.
It's one cell thick. Yeah.
Right? And then the inflammation in that
Fragile.
area, you're not going to recover. Your muscles, your tissues aren't going to heal.
Well, as always, Cal, I've left myself with a little bit of numbness to my brain because I love stretching quick with you, man. We get into it and go. I can't wait to see what we're going to do with Metabolic Elite over the next few years with the research agenda that you and I have. I'm really leaning on you to help with that research, and I know that we're going to discover some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting, and hopefully people will join us for our Elite Minds workshop too.
Absolutely. We may have a couple things to say.
We're going to have a lot to say. That'll be great.
All right, man.